Endless ocean views, midnight buffets, and five-star luxury gliding through the Caribbean. It's an absolute paradise. Until you meet the people on board. Give a human enough money and a balcony cabin, and they will literally file paperwork to complain about the laws of nature. Here are the most unhinged cruise grievances ever recorded. 1. Guest services offered him a free night at the steakhouse, and he turned it down because accepting a meal might weaken his claim. The claim was 19% of his fare, and Roland Petch, a retired dentist 3 days into a Fort Lauderdale sailing, had worked that figure out on hotel notepaper with headings, like an itemized bill. The disputed line item was scenery. In his written words, the ocean had failed to vary. Same blue, 3 days running. He then asked who at Carnival was responsible for route aesthetics. Nobody is responsible for route aesthetics. He wanted that answer in writing. 2. The diamond stud went in somewhere between the salad bar and the omelet station, and her demand was that the ship hold every bag of waste from lunch service so she could go through it, which they did. 3 deckhands hauled the bags into a crew corridor on a princess ship, and a woman from Charlotte spent an hour and 10 minutes in borrowed gloves sorting melon rinds and paper napkins under a work light. Nothing. The earring was in the cabin safe, where she'd put it that morning before breakfast, and she found it at 4 that afternoon. The complaint she filed that evening was that nobody on staff had suggested checking the safe first. 3. 91 signatures on a petition to fire a piano player for being too good. That was the actual grievance from a Sarasota woman on a 14-night transatlantic. Marco in the atrium lounge played well drew crowds. Crowds ruined the armchair she'd claimed as her morning reading spot on day 1. She got most of those signatures by telling people at breakfast the petition was about extending buffet hours. Cunard kept Marco. She relocated to a stairwell landing on deck 6 and filed a second complaint about that, citing the stairs, which were in the stairwell. 4. He wanted 80% back on a whale. 3 humpbacks surfaced within sight of his excursion boat in Juneau, which by any reasonable standard is a good day, but the brochure photo showed one fully airborne, and his had merely rolled around like wet furniture. He argued false advertising. The excursion desk pointed to the wildlife disclaimer printed on his own ticket. His counter was that a disclaimer can't cover a photograph, and then he asked whether the ship kept records of which whales were where that morning, so he could establish that better whales had been available, and he'd been given the leftovers. 5. A formal written complaint against a seagull, filed by a Houston insurance adjuster who lost a chicken tender off his plate on the pool deck in Nassau, and filed properly, with a request for the bird to be identified, removed from the vessel, and the part that made a 22-year-old crew member set down her pen, with a request for Norwegian's written policy on avian trespassers so he could evaluate liability. They gave him 6 new tenders free. He ate all 6 and still wrote to corporate 2 weeks later, describing the bird as clearly habituated to human food sources, which, to be fair to the man, it absolutely was. 6. 15 minutes into the muster drill, she announced that she should be excused because she was an excellent swimmer. Triathlon 2011. The safety officer explained that international law does not care about her split times. So she pivoted, and this is where it gets genuinely strange. She wanted written confirmation in her passenger file that her swimming ability had been noted, so that during an actual emergency, the crew wouldn't waste a life vest on her that a weaker swimmer might need. Selfless premise, deranged conclusion. Nothing went in the file. She checked twice more that week to see whether it had. 7. They wanted the stabilizers switched off for the last 2 nights, and they were completely serious about it. 6 adults from New Jersey had booked a Caribbean sailing expecting to rock, braced for it, one of them holding $40 of motion sickness patches that were now just sitting in a drawer being useless. Their designated spokesman called it a static experience and asked for the patches reimbursed plus a fare reduction. The hotel director spent 10 patient minutes explaining what stabilizers do and why. They followed every word, nodded, asked good questions, and then repeated the request, adding that 2 nights would be plenty. 8. A couple on day 3 of a Caribbean cruise demanded the chapel be unlocked so they could get married that afternoon. No documents, no officiant, no notice, no plan beyond a Tuesday feeling. Told that shipboard weddings require paperwork filed in advance, a licensed officiant, and a fee, the man asked whether the captain could just do it the old way because he'd seen that in a movie. Captains have not had that power in a very long time. They pushed it to the hotel director, lost, and filed a complaint the next morning stating that the chapel was, quote, decorative. 9. A hoodie has sleeves. It has a zipper. It goes on over a shirt. That was the case a man from Tampa made to the dining room manager of a celebrity ship after being turned away from formal night, and he made it for 11 minutes. He asked to see the written policy. He was shown the written policy, which said jacket required, and pointed out that his garment was, by any functional definition, a jacket. Then he demanded the line publish an actual definition, fabric, buttons, something measurable. Garrigi, before the next formal night. 2 nights later, the daily program specified sport coat or blazer. He told his table mates he'd change the rules. 10. Free upgrade to a mini suite, and they wanted cash instead. A couple from Ohio had booked the cheapest inside cabin on a Mexican Riviera run, got moved up before sailing at no charge, and arrived at the desk on day 1 with a grievance. The new room sat above a lounge, further from the elevator, and they'd never asked to be moved. Their demand was the dollar value of an upgrade they hadn't paid for, roughly $600 by their reading of the website. Denied, so they asked to be put back in the inside cabin. That happened on day 2. On day 3, they complained about having no window. 11. A father of 3 on a Galveston sailing wanted the water slide closed to adults, announced over the ship's loudspeaker, effective immediately. His reasoning was that adults weigh more, so they slide faster, so they cycle through more often. So his kids waited longer, which is almost mathematics. Youth staff explained the only restriction is a height minimum. He offered a compromise. Adults permitted after 9 at night only. Denied. Then, his own brother-in-law, traveling in the next cabin, rode that slide 14 times in one afternoon, and the man filed a fresh complaint about a specific guest ruining the experience for children. 12. Her steward folded the towel into an elephant. She wanted swans. What she requested at the desk was a written inventory of every towel animal in the man's repertoire, so she could select 1 per night for the remaining 8 nights and have the schedule countersigned by a supervisor. Ferdy had been folding towels on that ship for 9 years and had never been asked for documentation. He made her a swan every single night and said nothing about it, not once, and at the end of the cruise, she tipped him $12 and mentioned that the next could be crisper. 13. $218 of bar tab, disputed on the last morning of a Princess cruise on the grounds that he'd been on vacation. His position was that cruise lines should review guest spending for reasonableness before charging it, the way a bank flags a suspicious purchase, and void anything they judge excessive. So he wanted the line to decide, retroactively, which of his own drinks he shouldn't have bought. When told no institution on earth works that way, he asked for the name of the person who decided it doesn't work that way so he could write to them personally. 14. He filmed the ship leaving without him and submitted the video as proof they'd left early. A man from Dayton had lost track of time on a bar patio in Cozumel, watched his cruise pull away from 400 yards up the waterfront, then flew to the next port on his own dime and sent Royal Caribbean a demand for the airfare, the hotel, and the taxi, $1,400, plus the day he lost. The all-aboard time was printed in the program in his back pocket, and the gangway cameras had him going nowhere near the pier until 26 minutes after it. He asked for his video back. 15. The letter arrived at Holland, America 3 weeks after the cruise ended, and the complaint was that his dinner table mates had been too enjoyable. Shared table for 8 on a Baltic sailing, and he'd liked all of them. That was the injury. He'd booked a romantic anniversary trip, and instead, his wife acquired 4 new friends, a group chat, and plans to meet in Phoenix in the spring. He requested a refund of the dining assignment fee. There is no dining assignment fee. He requested that be refunded as well, and included his booking number twice. 16. A woman on a Mexican Riviera sailing wanted the ship's naturalist fired for misidentifying dolphins. He'd called them common dolphins. She was certain from a documentary that they were bottlenose. So she took it to guest relations, then the cruise director, then a comment card, then had the front desk print her 4 copies of a wildlife page off the internet, one for each official she'd already cornered. The naturalist has a master's degree in marine biology. When this was mentioned, she said credentials aren't everything and asked whether he'd ever actually watched a documentary about it. 17. Filed against another passenger for winning trivia. 2 men from Denver went undefeated across 5 sessions on a Virgin sailing, and a woman who lost all 5 wanted them barred as professionals, her evidence being that one of them knew the capital of Burkina Faso. The cruise director explained that trivia is open to every guest aboard. She then proposed a separate league restricted to people who don't know things, which is honestly a better product than half the entertainment on that ship. They ran an easier session on day 6. She came 4th out of 5 teams. 18. He complained that the auctioneer hadn't stopped him. $1,100, 2 glasses of complimentary champagne, 1 seascape he genuinely loved and hung in his cabin and showed to strangers in the elevator. No deception anywhere in the transaction. His argument at guest services was that the art program should have recognized he was making an emotional purchase and intervened, the way a bartender cuts a man off, and that the sale was therefore void. His wife stood beside him through the entire pitch and did not say one word, which told the staff everything about how the previous evening had gone. 19. Guest services was asked to intervene in a marriage. A woman on a 7-night Bahamas sailing wanted her husband barred from the buffet, not warned, barred ad, because she'd put him on a diet in March and he'd abandoned it somewhere around the 2nd sea day. Her proposal was that the crew flag his key card and turn him away at the entrance. Told the line cannot block a paying guest from meals he's already paid for, she scaled it down. Could somebody be stationed near the desserts to make eye contact with him? He was, at that exact moment, in the buffet. 20. The room service card lists 7 beverages with a checkbox beside each. He checked all 7. Every morning, 10 mornings straight, on a tray that eventually required 2 hands and a rebalancing act outside the cabin door, because as he explained to a supervisor on night 4, the card does not say, choose one, it says check what you want. Coffee, tea, hot chocolate, 3 juices, milk. He drank maybe 2 of them. The complaint he actually filed was about the 9th morning, when somebody in the galley wrote "confirm order" in pen on his card. He called that tone. 21. The ship turned around at 2 in the morning to get a passenger ashore to a hospital in San Juan, and the Itinerary lost a port. By lunch the next day, a man from Scottsdale was at guest services asking who it was. Not out of concern. He wanted a name, so he could pursue the family for the $200 in excursion deposits and the day of vacation he'd lost, and he wanted the line to confirm in writing that the diversion was that passenger's fault rather than theirs. Staff told him medical matters are private. 22. She wanted a shallower route. A woman aboard a Norwegian ship out of Miami stood at guest services and asked to be rerouted somewhere the water looked clearer, because the Atlantic was murky compared to the photos the entire trip had been planned around. Photos, it turned out, of reef shallows in French Polynesia. The agent explained gently that deep ocean reads dark because it's deep. She asked how deep. Around 9,000 feet under the ship at that moment. She took that in, thought about it, and asked whether they could sail somewhere with less water underneath. 23. A shoelace was the instrument. Knotted at intervals because there wasn't a tape measure aboard he trusted, or aboard at all. A man from Reno convinced himself his cabin was smaller than his brother's next door, after the brother happened to say his own felt roomy, and the two rooms were identical on paper. Same square footage, mirrored layout, same balcony. The shoelace put his 4 inches short. He wanted the difference in fare back. When the ship offered to send an officer with an actual tape measure and do both cabins in front of him, he declined, on the grounds that the ship's tape measure could not be assumed neutral. 24. He used the rock climbing wall twice and loved it. The complaint was that nobody had warned him it existed. A man on his first cruise took this to the cruise director at length. Had the pre-cruise email disclosed the climbing wall, he would have packed proper shoes, and the omission had denied him what he termed optimal preparation. So he wanted to be reimbursed for a pair of climbing shoes. Not shoes he'd bought, he hadn't bought any, and wasn't going to. Hypothetical shoes. He wanted money for hypothetical shoes he had decided not to purchase. 25. Nobody reads those. That was the husband's answer after the hotel director walked them line by line through the contract they'd signed. A tropical storm sat across a Caribbean itinerary. The bridge swapped 2 ports for 2 others, and a couple from Georgia arrived at guest services with the position that weather is forecastable. Meteorology is a science, and therefore the cruise line had knowingly sold an itinerary it never intended to deliver. They wanted the whole fare refunded, not the port difference. Every dollar, plus what they'd spent on 2 excursions they'd booked independently for ports that no longer existed on the route. 26. Aggressive numbers. That's the phrase a retired school teacher used on the deck supervisor of a Holland America ship about the font painted on the shuffleboard court, and she wanted it repainted before the tournament in 2 days. Told the court was painted in dry dock and cannot be redone at sea, she pivoted to a workaround. Handwrite the bracket scores on paper rather than posting them on the board, so she'd never have to look at the numerals. They did it. Somebody actually sat there with a legal pad for 3 rounds. She won her bracket and thanked them. 27. A woman on a Royal Caribbean sailing complained that her balcony faced the wrong way for sunsets. She'd booked portside on the advice of a Facebook group, and for 6 evenings, the sun went down over starboard. Cabin swap requested, denied, ship full. Then compensation requested for what her husband called a ruined honeymoon, over a very patient assistant manager explaining that ships change heading, that this is fundamental to the concept of going places. Her closing argument was that if a vessel is going to turn around, that should be disclosed at the point of booking. 28. He offered to pay for the fuel. The plan was for the crew to lower the lifeboat hanging outside his window for an hour each afternoon. Then the Alaska glaciers would photograph with nothing but ice in the frame. He'd booked the obstructed view cabin on purpose, the cheap kind where something on deck sits in front of your glass. He brought that up himself, like the $400 he'd saved strengthened his case. The safety officer explained that lifeboats come down for drills and inspections and nothing else. So he asked for the drill schedule. Every time a boat touched the water that week, there he was on deck 7 with the camera. 29. 2 men aboard an MSC ship out of Miami had the same first and last name, and the spa charges kept landing on the wrong account. Fixable in about 4 minutes. But the man who noticed first didn't want the charges reversed. He wanted the other guy to change his name for the week. Add a middle initial, use a nickname, something. When that went nowhere, he asked for the other passenger to be reassigned to a different dinner seating, so the 2 of them would never appear on the same list again. The line put middle initials on both accounts. He spent the rest of the cruise referring to the man as the imposter, at volume, at a shared table for 10. 30. 3 days out of Baltimore, the buffet went crew-served. Gloves, masks, somebody else holding the tongs, which is what every line does the moment a stomach bug starts moving through a ship. Most people shrugged and joined the line. A man from Delaware filed a formal complaint demanding the return of what he called his tong rights. He'd purchased a self-service dining experience, he wrote, and was now being handed his food like a toddler. He wanted a date in writing for when he could touch the serving spoons again. On day 5, a supervisor found him at the salad station working with a pair of chopsticks he'd taken off the Asian counter. 31. His cabin phone was dead, so he couldn't call maintenance about the dead phone. The front desk told him to call maintenance from the phone. He walked down 4 decks and reported it in person on a Carnival ship, and the crew logged it the only way the form allows, as a call placed from the cabin. The phone got fixed on day 5. The complaint he filed on day 6 was that the log entry was factually inaccurate, and he wanted it amended. It was not amended. 32. They were his songs, he told the karaoke host on the second night, and he'd already sung them. He handed over a list of 6 titles, artists written beside each one. All 6 needed to come out of the book for the rest of the week. Letting other passengers near them would be duplication. He used that word 4 or 5 times with real feeling. The host explained that a karaoke book isn't a claim system. He took it to the entertainment desk and got the same answer. On Thursday, a woman from Ontario sang one of the 6, and going by the room, sang it better. He didn't come back to that lounge. 33. The library was too quiet. A woman on a Cunard crossing found reading in silence on deck 9 made her feel, in her words, like she was in trouble, and she wanted soft jazz piped in for everybody. Not headphones from the shop. She turned those down flat, because that solved her problem instead of the rooms. Denied. So she moved her reading to the casino and then filed about the casino, the smoke, the noise, and a man named Dale who kept explaining slot machine strategy to her while she was clearly holding a novel. 34. The ship's doctor was asked to prove the toxins had left her body. She'd paid $240 for a seaweed detox wrap in the spa on the second sea day, felt exactly the same afterward, and decided a blood test would settle it. The spa, obviously, should cover the test. The doctor deals with sprained ankles and chest pain, and he declined to measure anything at all. So she went back down and demanded a refund, on the grounds that nobody could prove the treatment had done a thing. She took that argument all the way to the hotel director, got half her money back, and spent it on a facial. 35. The son-in-law was sitting at the table when the prince came out. 12 copies, 8 by 10, of the family portrait from the formal night on a princess sailing, and he wasn't in a single one. Grandpa had gone back to the photo studio the next morning, demanding the man be taken out of the picture because he'd smiled wrong. Too much teeth in his assessment, ruining an otherwise perfect group. Ship studios retouch all day long, so they cut him out, patched the gap with a piece of curtain, and charged full price for 12 prints. He handed them around at dinner while everybody at that table found something else to look at. 36. He wanted an asterisk. A man in his 30s ran 5 miles every morning on the same treadmill of a Royal Caribbean ship. Every day he came in slower than his times at home, and he concluded the vessel was stealing about 40 seconds a mile from him. So his times should go into the gym log, marked as sea affected, and while they were at it, the machines ought to be recalibrated for the ship's motion. He mentioned a running club back home that would otherwise count the week against his average. The trainer, who was 24 and had never been asked to certify anything, told him a treadmill belt doesn't know it's at sea. He ran the last 2 mornings out on deck. Those times were worse. 37. His wife drank 2 lemonades in 7 days, and he wanted the other 103 drinks in cash. He'd done the arithmetic out loud at the Carnival guest services desk. 15 drinks a day on her unlimited package, 7 days minus 2 lemonades. The balance belonged to him, he figured, since both packages came off the same credit card. Told that drink programs have never worked like that anywhere on the water, he asked whether the unused ones rolled over to his next cruise. Then he asked whether her package could be canceled retroactively and rebilled as 2 lemonades at menu price plus tax. 38. 34 greetings by lunch on day 2, and she had every one of them logged on her phone. Good mornings, good afternoons, enjoy your evenings, a bartender who remembered her name. This was a Disney ship where being greeted is essentially the product. She asked the front desk to flag her cabin. No greetings, no eye contact, treat her as furniture. They actually did it. Word went around the crew, and for 2 days she got a wide, cheerful berth from every uniform on board. On day 5, she was back at that same desk, asking why nobody said good morning to her anymore. 39. On day 3, he put it in writing. Weld the neighbor's balcony door shut. The neighbor had been smoking out there and sending all of it through the open slider next door. The smoking part is a real violation. Balconies have been non-smoking on most lines for years, with a cleaning fee for anyone caught. Security had a word, and it stopped, so the problem was solved. Then came the follow-up. He wanted the $250 fee charged to the neighbor and handed to him personally as the injured party. Told the fee goes to the cruise line, he asked who at the cruise line was keeping it. 40. 20 minutes after she gave up on the machine, a man from her own tour group sat down at it and hid $11,000. She'd been feeding that slot for 3 hours on a sea day out of Tampa and quit because her arm hurt. Her position, delivered to the casino host in writing, was that she had loosened the machine and was owed half. Casinos do not run on the loosening principle. She was told no twice. Then she spent the last 4 days of the cruise not speaking to him, not to his wife, and not to anybody she saw drinking with them. 41. He brought the smoothie receipt as proof that he'd never actually left the pool deck. Deck staff had cleared his towel and paperback off a poolside lounger at minute 41. That's standard on most lines now. Leave a chair unattended past half an hour, and your things end up at the towel hut. He'd been in line for a drink. His demand was that the crew member responsible be identified to him, and that the ship extend the window to 2 hours, effective that afternoon. Nobody vacations on a stopwatch, he said. The policy stayed exactly as written. For the last 3 days of that cruise, he ate lunch in the chair, which is either discipline or defeat. 42. The signature on the captain's photograph is printed. Every one of them, on every ship every week. A man on a princess sailing held his up to the light, worked it out, and brought it to guest services as a case of misrepresentation. He wanted the line to stop calling the thing signed in its own onboard advertising. He also requested a bridge visit to obtain a real one, which is a security matter, and was never happening. Nobody could tell him whether the printed version was even the captain's own handwriting. The photo went up on his cabin mirror regardless. 43. The request that reached a bar manager on deck 5 was that the ship turn 30 degrees, maybe 40, whatever it took to hold the satellite on a football signal that kept dropping through the second quarter. He'd worked the angle out on the compass app on his phone before coming over, and he presented it as a small favor. The bar manager relayed it to nobody. The signal came back on its own at halftime, and the game finished fine. His complaint the next morning argued that the second half hadn't been the same after everything he'd been through. 44. He slept through the equator. The line crossing ceremony still runs on repositioning sailings. King Neptune, a cruise director in a wig, somebody getting a wet fish handed to them, and he was in his cabin for all of it. So he asked for it to be run again. The entertainment desk offered the certificate instead, which he accepted. Then he requested a second certificate, covering a crossing he'd made years earlier on a different line that hadn't bothered with them. They printed that one too. 45. A stranger in a Cardinals hat had told him he was wrong about a trade. and he fully intended to finish that conversation. Trouble was, the buffet is the size of a supermarket, and the man had wandered off with his plate. So he asked guest services for the passenger list. Cruise lines do not hand 3,000 names to a man with a baseball grievance. Next, he asked the cruise director to page the guy to the atrium over the ship's speakers. Also, no. For 4 days, he described the hat and the mustache to every bartender aboard, and on the last night, he found him. Same station, same argument. 46. The teen club takes 13 and up. Her son was 12, and she told the youth desk his birthday was in 2 weeks, which it was not. He got in. For 4 evenings, he sat in a beanbag chair with a handheld game while nobody spoke to him, because he was 12 and everybody else was 15. Her complaint on day 6 was that the teenagers had been unwelcoming, and she wanted staff running introductions every night for the rest of the sailing. They moved him down to his own age group, where he had 3 friends within the hour. She filed again about being moved without consultation. 47. The complaint named 2 other women by description, plus the night in question. World Cruise segments carry dance hosts, older gentlemen hired to partner solo women in the ballroom, and a widow from Naples, Florida, had decided hers belonged to her. She wanted him exclusive from 8 to 10 each evening, in writing, for the remaining 11 nights. Rotation is the whole job, the entertainment manager told her. Nothing changed on paper. She just started arriving 40 minutes early and putting her handbag on the chair beside his. 48. Adults only was printed on the door in the daily schedule, and on the sign the crew member was standing right next to. She brought her 8-year-old to the 11 o'clock comedy set anyway and got turned around at the entrance. Then she went up to the cruise director demanding that the comedian perform a clean version at 11, since families were obviously on board. She named him in the written complaint. Carnival kept him and kept the show. Her online review that Saturday said the ship wasn't suitable for families, a remarkable conclusion to reach from outside a room you were told not to enter. 49. His birthday landed on a sea day, and he treated that as a scheduling error. On the first morning, he asked the shore excursion desk to swap the order of 2 ports, so the day would fall in St. Martin instead of open water. Berth slots get booked with port authorities months ahead, and thousands of people's return flights hang on the schedule. He heard all of that out. Then he asked whether the ship could at least reach the next island early and leave late, so the birthday touched land on both ends. 50. He brought a cup from the buffet, the clear kind with measurement lines molded into the side, and set it on the bar. His rum and cokes were coming up short, and he'd like the next one poured into that instead. Bartenders on that Carnival ship use measured spouts, which was exactly what he found suspicious. What he wanted was the bar's measuring equipment tested by an officer before the next sea day. A supervisor humored him and poured into a proper jigger in front of him. Twice. Dead on both times. He said the jigger looked small. 51. The laundry mark inside the collar wasn't his. Same white shirt, same brand, same size, different inked code. The man from Rochester who spotted it wanted the ship searched cabin by cabin until his own turned up. 1,400 cabins. He was also completely right, which is the part that sticks with you. Somewhere on that ship another man was walking around in a stranger's shirt and sleeping like a baby. Guest services offered $30 and a laundry credit. He took it, wore the wrong shirt on formal night, and emailed 2 weeks later to ask whether the other man had ever been found. The crew has to smile while getting yelled at over seagulls and sunshine. Should cruise captains be legally allowed to maroon one insufferable passenger per trip on a deserted island as a warning to the rest? I think the industry would fix itself overnight. Let me know your vote in the comments, and don't forget to smash that like and subscribe button for more crazy stories.